Tonight in Ukraine, Oleksandra Ustinova is a member of Ukraine's opposition. She joins me also tonight. So it's really getting rather tricky, isn't it? Because, the EU wants to give the money and Orban says no, and they'll do a fudge. The US wants to give the money, but it's being held hostage. How badly do you need this money or you'll lose?
Well, I cannot agree more to the other Ukrainian whom you just quoted. We're going to lose. And the question is whether the West is ready for Ukraine to lose, because everybody keeps talking that Ukraine is winning, when Ukraine is going to win. Well, at this moment, unfortunately, if you look at the morale, you see at the number of the munitions that are coming, not only to the front lines, but to the civilian cities for the air defense systems. It is obvious that Ukraine is going to lose, and it's going to be totally bombed by all the Shahid drones from Iran and the air missiles that Russia is producing 3 times more than they did last year.
So why do you think it's got to? I mean, when the war started, we all talked about war fatigue, and we actually thought that was going to happen maybe in 2022. But actually, it's taken longer, but it has happened, hasn't it? The West seems to be saying, well, we'd like to help you, but sorry, we can't get you the check.
So one thing the West does not understand, it is much cheaper to give a check to Ukraine than later to fight in Europe a big war, having your boots on the ground and your soldiers die. So far, the United States has invested less than 0.5% of their budget to support Ukraine. And with this money, the Ukrainians managed to almost totally destroy the biggest second army in the world. And I think this is a really good investment because Russian army has been the #1 enemy to the US one. Right. So if the United States think that Ukrainians are going to win anyway, because at the beginning of the war, everybody thought, oh, well, Ukrainians are going to go down in 24, then 72 hours. We survived and we kicked their asses. Well, right now it's different.
Okay. So what do you think of Viktor Orban? I mean, without his veto, tonight you'd have 60-odd billion.
Viktor Orban is the puppet of Putin. And no matter what Ukraine does, no matter what bills we're going to be pushing through the parliament to satisfy him as one of the European countries, he will be backing up Putin anyway. And unfortunately, this is a problem for the EU, because right now EU shows that there is a weak spot and there is unfortunately nothing they can do about it.
So one of the issues, of course, is elections. Do you think the elections should go ahead?
The elections were in Ukraine?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you the recent polls, 89% of Ukrainians do not support elections during the wartime because we will not be able to provide the right to vote for more than 6 million people who are outside of the country, to more than 1 million people who are at the battlefield. And unfortunately, the elections is something that is tearing always the country apart, which Ukraine cannot afford at the moment. And the majority of people, 89% of Ukrainians, think that the elections should be held after the war is over.
So at this point, I mean, the counteroffensive is now sort of tapered down because of winter. The money, I think, we all know the money will arrive eventually, a day late and a dollar short, as the Americans say. But I'm wondering if you think the urgency is quite appreciated.
I can give you an example. My best friend was killed in war, and a lot of his comrades and combatants are now fighting there. And they called me and they said, Sasha, can you explain why we had to put lives of our best friends to actually get every kilometer that we put lives into, and now we have to give it back because there is fatigue, or someone is still thinking whether they should be supporting us or not, and they don't think that there is an urgency. Well, there is an urgency to our soldiers because they had paid lives to take every kilometer back, and now they have to return. Second, if there is no urgency, Ukraine will be totally shelled and bombed by the Russian missiles. Russia has managed to produce 3 times more missiles this year than they did last year. So being under sanctions, they produced 1,200 missiles, and they're not actually shooting them right now at Kyiv. They're using the Iranian drones. Why? Because they want to do a massive attack with 300 drones and 150 ballistic missiles. totally eliminating Kyiv and
All
other
right.
cities from the map.
We'll talk more. We'll follow more. And you're always welcome back on Quest Means Business. Thank you so much. In difficult circumstances, I wish you a good weekend.